seconds usually to get started. I will also. Oh, and we are live. All right, Andy, thanks for doing this. And
Hey,
I didn't mention this, but my name Ondra, it's the Czech version of Andy. So we're actually
oh,
like
is it really?
namesakes. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there. All right.
Um,
So,
all right. So Andy, what is it like to be you?
what's it like to be me? Well, we were kind of just talking about that, weren't we?
A little
Before
bit, a
we
little
we
bit.
went live. Um, yeah. So, where I come from is I come from a very my parents were 60s, right? They raised me in the 60s. I'm not as young as I look, although I look amazing at this age. But no, so they always taught me my and my grandparents too to think outside the box and not run with the crowd and make your own decisions and do your own due diligence, right? And just be a free thinker because that was the era I was brought up in. So I believe that we should not be like I just said, like in kindergarten, and we all line up and we all have to do a line and stand in that line. And I don't believe that. I truly believe that free thinkers, people that are a little bit outside of the spectrum. Elon Musk is a great example, right? I mean, look at what that man's given us, right? You might not
Yeah.
agree with everything that he does or his politics or whatever, but damn, you know. And there's a documentary coming out or something like that about Leonardo da Vinci, about just really
Okay.
what a genius he was, and a free thinker, right? And some people, like you and I talked about earlier, they shun people like that, and because they don't understand them,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
But
I'm a huge fan.
look at what,
Hmm?
yeah. So no, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of free thinking as well. Like thinking for yourself. I think Napoleon Hill, in so obviously everybody knows Think and Grow Rich, right? M
Yeah.
Maybe
Uh-huh.
not so many people know. I think the book is called Outwitting the Devil. It was his
Hmm.
second or third or fourth. I'm not sure, but he didn't publish it like when he was still alive. But then his family published it later. The book itself has a great story, but like in the book he outlined like more of like the principle or the concept of thinking for yourself instead of just following what everybody else thinks or wants you to think or wants you to do, and actually being
Yeah.
being critical. And yeah, critical thinking has been definitely a big theme and a big concept around my life. Like I mean, I'm literally
Yeah.
creating my own like religion or my own philosophy, so I'm not sure how much more of a free thinker can you be if you're just like, oh, just I don't like any of these religions or philosophies. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna create my own, and that's kind of how I've operated. So I can
Uh,
relate to that.
I, I I love that, and really it comes down to gravitating towards people that are like that as well, because they change not only your life, but they change the perception, and you might lose friends and family along the way, and that's okay too. You know, I mean, it hurts. I just lost a good friend, and that hurts because there was a huge
Yep.
misunderstanding. I won't go into it because it's too personal, but it happens, right? Because you might be stepping outside of their comfort zone. That's all, and that's really what it comes down
Yeah,
to.
that happens. It
Yeah.
has happened to me a bunch of times as well. Yeah, I remember what this was like. What, 2 years ago? A year and a half, or maybe about a year and a half ago. And I wasn't doing this podcast yet, but I was like still doing virtual coffees and stuff and like having normal meetings, but just not live. And that happened, and this person was just like, I don't ever want to talk to you. Just like, don't even message me. Like, I'm like, what did I even do? And they didn't want to explain, right? Like, I had no idea what I even did.
Yeah.
But they just flipped out, and so I was like kind of like bummed out. I'm like overthinking a little bit. Like, what did I do? Like, could I have done anything? Like, as like the, and it was a good friend. I thought it was a good friend, anyways. And so I get on the meeting, and I'm like, And she's like, yeah, so how you doing? What's up? I'm like, well, honestly, like I'm feeling like shit right now, you know, because like a friend basically just like broke up with me over I don't even know what happened.
Hmm.
Because I like to be honest, you know, when people ask, "Oh, how are you doing?" Everybody's more usually just like, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good." I'm just like,
Right.
I'm like, stuff's happening, you know, like life.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pretend it's all good.
Yeah.
And so and so she was like very very supportive, and I like to share this as well because what owns a company of she owns a company of like self love for you, right? So she's a coach as well, and so she kind of
Yeah.
helped me guide me through it a little bit. But the first thing she did, she was like, "Well, but okay, before we get into anything, I start every one of my meetings with a dance session. So you have to send me your favorite song right now, and we're going to dance." I'm
Okay.
like I'm in a coffee shop, you know. There's like 20 people sitting around, and she's like, "Oh, okay, I guess we can skip it today." Then I'm like, "No, no, 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 I didn't say that. I just said, you know, I just said it's a little bit more uncomfortable, but I'm gonna do it anyways." So I had my
Yeah.
phone on on my tripod like that, put it on the table in the coffee shop, and just like I don't remember the song. It was maybe "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. Maybe I sent her, and so we just danced. Like I looked around a little bit, and people were like, "What's happening there?" You know,
Uh,
this guy like dancing with on a video call with this older lady, and it was great. And then the dance helped a lot, and then we talked about it a little bit more. Um,
yeah.
but I say this because, well, first of all, you mentioned, you know, breaking up with a friend kind of sucks sometimes, and that's what it's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's in life overall, especially if you're just trying to create your own path and your own way, right, and creating your own things. And secondly, um, I feel like it's always better to share and not
Yeah.
just be like, oh, everything's good, yeah. And this was the first time I met this person, by the way. Like I've never spoken to her before, right?
Oh wow.
And yeah, so I like to be more honest because it helps you just process things and like because I could be pretending, but then maybe some people can tell, you know, that like especially if she's been a coach for a while, she could probably tell that I'm like, oh, like he's not in a good mental health headspace right now, you know.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
even if people can't tell like consciously, like okay, something's, you know, something's happening, most people can tell kind of subconsciously based on subtle cues and body language and whatnot. They can't really put anything on it, but they can feel it, you know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
being like, oh yeah, everything's good, you know, like it just doesn't work very well. um
No, and I believe that too. I think you have to be true to who you are, you know, and I think that, and that's part of what, you know, I want to talk about here as well. But that's part of my consciousness is when people ask you how you are, our first reaction as a society is say exactly what you said. I'm fine. Because if we tell them that we're not doing fine, that's not really what they want to hear, which is kind of sad. But
yeah,
I think that you know it's time for that. There's a lot of people flipping that switch, right?
yeah.
And I want to be
I
part
had
of
a
that as
Awesome.
well.
I had a guy on this podcast on the show maybe a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about he was a veteran and he talked about like PTSD and he talked about suicide, like suicide attempts and stuff like that. And he said, well, I have a lot of buddies who I knew that they weren't doing very well, and I would go talk to them, I would go check up on them, and they would be like, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine, you know. And then he said, I just started asking like directly, and like he said, have you considered suicide? Like he started asking people directly. So it's like
Mm.
interesting because he knew that they were struggling, right? So I guess you're just not gonna ask anybody, oh, how are you doing? People say good, and you're just like, have you considered suicide? Like probably not, but
Right?
because they were already buddies. So he would ask like, so how are you doing? What's going on, right? And people would be like, I'm good, I'm fine. And then literally the next question he would ask would be, have you considered suicide in the last week? And people would be like, actually, yeah.
Mm.
But they will say that I'm good, I'm fine, but like they're thinking about, you know, ending it. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
just an interesting way society works sometimes, you know, like, oh, you just have to say you're fine. Come on.
yeah. Well, that's how we're but that's how we're programmed.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm glad you're.
what's your story? We can shift gears a little
Well,
bit. You said,
so
I think you mentioned in TV and radio or something like that.
well, you see, all this stuff behind me is keeps me number one. It reminds me to be a superhero every day to everybody that I meet. Right. Number two is I worked on special effects, not all of this, but
Oh,
I enjoy special effects. I worked in TV and broadcast for, oh God, probably more like years than you're old. So I loved it. It gave me a great career. I've worked with some amazing people in my career, and I owe a lot to it, right? But at the end of the day, like during COVID, when everything shut down,
mm,
um, I like to use a word called pivot, and when I hear pivot, I think of that scene in Friends. But that's kind of a, if you're a fan of Friends and you know the show,
pivot. Yep.
uh, I think that should be the analogy for everybody looking for a change in their life is pivot, right? So during that period, my wife and I, she lost her business because she's in the beauty
Mm,
industry, so we lost all our income. Like literally, like where the hell are we getting money from now? And
mm,
um, so honestly, thinking outside the box, like we're talking about, I'm thinking I always wanted to talk about real estate and be in real estate, and we started seeking out people, and this is from a mindset perspective, so it kind of ties into what we're doing here. So every morning I would wake up and I would research who was out there, who were the gurus that were talking about real estate, and who I can align myself with that was going to treat me the way I want to be treated and not be a salesman just looking at me as a dollar sign, right? Does that make sense? Right? Because there's a lot of
mm,
people out there that look at you as a dollar sign, and there's not anything behind that. So eventually we wound up meeting these two amazing women. They're married. They're called Jen and Stacy Conkey. They're just a godsend. And it was my wife who actually made the decision to go with them because she felt like she connected with them because she didn't want to be in a boys club, right? Because a lot of real estate is a boys club. That's not a bad
yeah.
thing. It's just that's the way it is. So she needed somebody that she could relate to as well. So what happened was we were the first of I think 5 or 10 people in this mentorship program, and this will lead back to my other conversation about how I kind of lost a friend. But what happened in that is that not only did they teach us how to buy real estate as investors with other people's money and do it from a standpoint of integrity, but they taught us mindset, right? And mindset is a big thing about everything that we do. Okay. And quite honestly, you can go into really bad, dark places when you have no income coming in, right? I mean, seriously, you can. Especially when your wife put in 30 years of her life building a business that just went to crap and
Mm,
um,
yeah.
lost a lot of money. So we started building our portfolio, and then eventually, you asked me if I was like a life coach, but I'm not. I'm not licensed to be a life coach. But what I am is a student of life coaching, right?
Okay.
So Jen, who is my mentor, she practices NLP, right? Neuro linguistic processing. I'm sure you've
Yep.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So um, if you're a good student and you're open and you're a sponge and you don't have an ego, right, then you can learn a new skill. And I was open to that because I spent a lot of money on college and I got what I wanted out of college, but it wasn't going to get me retired, right? Um,
Right.
and so, not to be long-winded, but the long and short of this is after 4.5 years of being in this mentorship program, we've done okay. Okay. But I mean, from a standpoint of owning real estate, we've got assets under management, if you understand that, right? But from a standpoint of mindset, is really what this is about. And so, based on that, I was at an event. I was on stage speaking, hosting one of their events, and I was talking about my story, which is much deeper than what we're going. I came from a very poor family. My
Mm,
parents divorced when I was 8. My mother tried to commit suicide. I came from a very, I told that story on stage, right? My
Mhm.
sister unfortunately took a drug overdose, not to try to kill herself, just it was an accident, and she passed away at 21. So
Oof.
I have a lot of luggage, right? So I'm telling this story on stage because it's really the hero's journey. You're familiar with the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
That everybody should be familiar with that story, because if you really put that story into your life, you understand where you're at. And I understood that I was at the crossroads in that story looking for a wizard. And the wizard was Jen Conkey. Okay.
Mm.
And she and I started talking, and after the conference, women and men started walking up to me and said, "How did you raise that kind of capital?" Because over the course of a year and a half, I raised like $4.5 million for a couple of deals, right? So she said, "How did not Jen, but somebody said, how did you do that?" And the phrase came out of my mouth without thinking about it. And I said, "I look for common threads." And that's what this discussion is about. So I went to bed that night and I couldn't stop thinking about that common thread, common thread. What is the common thread? And I woke up, got on my computer, and wrote 4 chapters of a book.
Nice.
So the common thread of all of us is listening for those moments in a conversation, right? Not to be interesting, but to be interested, like what you do every time you do a podcast, right? Or
Mhm.
you're interested in what I am talking about rather than you telling me all about you.
Mhm.
So, what came out of that was a book called The Common Thread Method, which actually the delivery of the book came to my house last week. So,
Nice.
so I pinch myself because I'm like, this is a reality. The book is a reality, and it's out there teaching people how to talk about money in a way that they normally wouldn't talk about money, because we
Mm.
all think about money as a currency, but really it's a river, right? And the
Mhm.
way I think about it is I had misconception of raising capital because I was I was born into a scarcity mindset, right? And so when you're born into a scarcity mindset, when I made my first $500 working out here, that was a lot of money to me. Like that was years ago though. That was like, oh my God, I hit the jackpot, right? Because that was a lot of money to me. Whereas most people are like, oh, I make that daily.
Yeah.
So you have to overcome. So the book is the thread method. Thread, THREAD, is an acronym, and I can take you through it real quick. So the T is really trust, right? So that's what the T is. So that it's trusting in relationships, and H is human connections, right?
Mhm.
R is creating rapport like we're doing now. E is having that emotional intelligence to understand relationships, right? And then A is really being authentic, and that's everywhere. And I'm not just talking about a conversation. I'm talking about social media, everywhere. Just be
Mhm.
yourself, be authentic. Um, THREA, yeah. And D is really the dedication of self growth.
Mm.
So,
Okay.
so Thread's an acronym, right?
Nice.
So it really delves into our relationship with ourselves, relationships to money, our relationships to um, everything, like understanding who we are. I know I'm being a little long-winded. You can cut me off anytime.
No,
But
don't worry.
so, like I understood when I was a kid, I was very shy. I was introverted. And I didn't learn about extroverts and introverts for a very long time. You can tell I'm not an introvert anymore, right? Because you have to teach yourself as an introvert to be an extrovert. So what I found in my research about doing the book is there's this thing called the ambivert.
Mm.
I don't know if you know that or not, but you probably do, right? So, things like that I uncovered when I was researching the book, and these lights were going off. So, it's really about teaching people, and I've said this before, who are out there raising capital for anything, it's the mindset behind that. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be real estate, right? It could be a business. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of my story. And I'm actually leaving November 7th to go talk about the book at a real estate convention.
Nice. Okay.
So, yeah. And my goal is to be able to help people really, really, really get down to the core of what's missing inside in conversations, right? And like really, like we listen, but we don't listen. We might hear, but what I'm trying to say, we hear, but we don't listen. So
Mm.
that's really what it is. Is what is the common thread in all of our relationships?
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of wisdom. I really resonated with when you said, "Oh wow, like I just made $500. That's a lot of money, right?" And you said you
Yeah,
come from a scarcity mindset and like scarcity family. I'm
yeah,
pretty much the same way. And m- in the with this is very interesting with the currency and stuff because we're definitely very different in age. But I'm from a
yes,
different country where um the amounts of money or the currency difference, I think maybe just makes about this a similar difference where like $500 was so much money. Like,
yeah,
and it still can be. Like in my country, it still can be, especially for younger people. So like have as a contrast, my first job, I had a part-time job like on the weekends while I was still in high school.
mm,
I made $2 an hour.
yeah. But that was a lot of money for you, right?
Well, yeah, it was like, oh my God, it was at first it was like I have my own money, like I don't have to go and like beg my parents and be screamed at for 3 hours because like I need money for school or something. Like, whoa, this is amazing, you know? And it was just like a little bit. I worked, weekends, and I would make what, less than $100 a month.
Yeah, but imagine how well you know how good you felt, right? So
Right,
yeah,
right. And
you
then
know how
it changes, right? And so you went from, wow, $500 is a lot of money, right?
yeah.
To you said 1.4 million or something
No,
like
I
that?
raised $4 million in a year and a half.
Four, 4 million.
Yeah,
So not one, but four.
yeah.
How did you have to work on your mindset? What kind of work did you have to do to like keep leveling up your capacity for like handling bigger amounts of money and understanding it and like maybe self-worth or what went into that into like your money mindset growth?
Well, again, I believe everybody needs a mentor, right, or a life coach, and you could find one and pay for one. That's fine, or you can have somebody that you really trust and loves you, or you love them in a way that you trust them with that. And I think that friendship is friendship, but you also need somebody that's going to be really honest and tell you where you're at,
Yeah.
right? Because
Okay.
um, I can bullshit. Can I say that? I can bullshit my way
Yeah.
through life every day and not and lie to myself and still be in the same place I was a year ago. Or I can open up myself to somebody who's telling me the truth about what I need to do. And my two mentors, Stacy and Jen, they, like I said, they do a lot of mindset work, and I believe in NLP. Like I'm a big proponent of it. So Jen would do these mindset sessions with me, and the breakthrough was visualization more than anything else. Was just visualizing what that would look like, right, in my own
Mm,
life, right? What would it look
okay.
like if I didn't do this? Like what if you
Mm,
project yourself out 5 years and you still haven't done the work? What does that look like, right? Are you
mm,
still in the same place where you were? And what's that going to look like and how's that going to feel? So when you go deep inside and you let yourself go there, I was like, well, shit, in 5 years, if I don't do something about this now, I'm never going to retire.
mm,
And then the other piece of that is the other person's mindset on the other end of that phone call when you're raising capital for anything. This happened to be a 96 unit apartment building that we were raising capital for, and the returns were crazy from the get go, right? And a lot of people here might not understand real estate, but from a standpoint of being able to pay back our investors, that's when it finally dawned on me that they were going to get 2x or 3x returns more than they would if they put their money in a bank.
Right.
And the light switch went off when the first person said, "I'll give you $100,000." I was like, "Oh crap, this could actually be a reality." And that's when it became real,
Mm.
right?
Like that
That
first sale, basically.
that's when it became real. Yeah. And then you become very overprotective because it's their
Mm.
money, not yours.
Right.
So you become very protective of them because they're like, well, now we have to make this work. They've just entrusted me with a lot of money. So
Yeah.
it really, I'm a big proponent on mindset and mentorship, which
Mm.
I took, honestly, I took too long in my life to seek out because
Mm.
I was doing very well in the movie and TV industry,
Yeah.
but
And getting into the movie industry, was that kind of just like a natural process for you, or
no, I graduated from college, moved out here from New York when I was young. I won't say
Mm.
how young, then you'll know how old I am now. But anyway, no, I worked I came out to California with a dream and couldn't get in. I could not get my foot in the door because I was nobody.
right?
Um, and I had a little bit of help from a cousin of mine, and then a little more help. And, you know, I think that if you really want to dream that, and you're committed to that dream, right? The dream at that time was I want to work in movies. I want to do special effects. That was the dream.
Mm.
And when you're young, like you shouldn't let anything get in your way if you have the dream that big. So, I mean, I literally came out to California broke, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a natural progression. I lived out here for 2 or 3 years without even getting a foot in the door.
Mm.
And then eventually, you get into it, you get into the right groups with the right people and the right connections, and I finally got my foot in the door. But then, even then, I was getting $150 a week. I wasn't getting paid that much money.
Yeah.
I was doing it, you know, and that's the beauty about being 21. So
How did you how did you manage, or what kept you going for, you said, 2 almost 3 years before even like getting a glimpse or getting your foot in the door, like you said? What kept you going all this time, like kept you believing that it's gonna happen eventually, that you still can make this work?
the dream, it really is about a dream. If you have a dream that's big enough, you will find a way to make it happen. I
Mm.
truly believe that. You will find a way to make it happen. And if you're not lazy about it, you will find a way to make it happen. And there were days I was lazy about it. I was working as a manager of a in a women's shoe department of a department store to pay my rent. So with everything I had done before that, like getting to that point, I was working in a women's shoe department to pay the rent.
Right. Yeah. It's like just do whatever you have to do. I can relate and resonate with a lot of this. It's just my dream and my goals were different, and the situation was different, but it also like took me what, about 2 years before I started seeing any progress, or like any of like, oh, this might actually work in reality.
Yeah,
And everybody told me I was crazy. Everybody told me I was crazy. Like, this is never gonna work. How? So just to a little bit of the backstory. When I was 13, I was getting bullied. I was having a pretty tough time at home, being screamed at, a lot of fights and a lot of verbal and emotional violence. Not really physical violence, thankfully, but like a lot
hmm
of verbal and emotional. So it was a tough time, and I became really socially anxious. Like not just introvert, not just shy, but like really anxious and really depressed. And it just got to the point where I'm like, I can't live like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. And it's like the thoughts of like, what's the point? And like, why don't I just jump in front of the train? And there was many stories around in my town, in my small town, that people jumping in front of trains. So that seemed
Mhm.
like the way to go. And I was like, well, if I don't do anything, then I'm just gonna end up doing that. Like, I don't really want to do that, right? But I just like, and so I went online, and thankfully I had like a phone back then, and I just Googled how to be happy. And that's kind
Mm.
of how the world started opening up, like the world of personal development and the world of self-help and all of these things. And I was 13 years old, right? So I got really obsessed with it, as I started learning about like practical psychology and changing habits and changing your mindset and doing these things here and there. And I started completely turning my life around. And within a few years, basically overcame social anxiety, overcame my depression, was making friends easily, was speaking to strangers on buses and stuff, which like nobody ever does, especially in my country, but basically anywhere in the world. Because like now, with the benefit of like hindsight, I've been to 20 countries, 3 continents, I've traveled all over, and I speak to strangers all the time. It's very rare that like normal strangers just speak to each other. But I started doing that, right? And
Yeah.
it was a big part of like overcoming my mental health issues. And so by the time I was 19, I was like, well, I want to start like a coaching business. I want to help people with social anxiety and like mental health and mindset. And that's where like I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna drop out of school. I was doing software engineering, like and learning like robotics and programming and stuff. I'm like, I think I'm gonna drop out of school to do my online business so I can like travel and help people. And that's where people were like, okay, you're like nuts. You've lost it. Like there's no way this is
Yeah.
ever gonna work. You're gonna throw your life away. Don't do this. And I just did it anyway. And it took me oh
Yeah.
2 years, maybe 2.5 even, of just like people be like, so are you making any money with your little online business thing yet? Like when you're gonna give up on this stupid dream? My own parents would like literally ask me, when are you gonna give up on this stupid dream and just like go have a real job or go back to school or something? And so I changed jobs a bunch of times. I moved out to a different country as well to work at the airport in Amsterdam, like baggage
Oh
handling.
wow.
While I was
Yeah.
building my business on the side, I was like loading suitcases. I was like, I'm gonna be on those planes. I'm gonna be flying all over soon.
Good for
While loading the luggage. And then yeah, in April 2022. I quit my job at the airport and I started doing it full time, and I've been all over and been coaching people on social anxiety and spoke on stages in a bunch of places, and
you. Yeah.
obviously been on a bunch of podcasts and do my own podcast now and all of this. And yeah, it's been a journey, but it started with, you're crazy, this is never gonna work. And I'm like, nah, I'm gonna do it anyway.
I did a lot of research on you on social media, and all the people that talk about you if it's meant to be, right? And I believe in the universe and gifts and I reached out because of who you are, right? And a lot of things I saw in a common thread that we're talking about here, and a lot of people are giving you. You should be very proud, is what I'm saying, about changing people's lives and your mission.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
you really should be. Um, I mean, I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I was when I was 13 years old. I knew exactly that I was going to be in
Nice.
Hollywood. I had no idea how
Wow.
the hell I was going to do that, but I knew I was going to be. And all of my family, friends, blah blah blah, they're like, "Well, you have no money. How are you getting out there?" And today, even today, my friends back in New Jersey, where I grew up, they will never come to California because they hate California for some reason. I have no idea why. But it's some people support you, some people don't, and those are the people that stay. I mean, and I honor you for your journey. I really do, because it takes a lot of balls and guts to go after what you want. You know,
Yeah,
and
it does.
and and if it's sometimes it's you don't make a lot of money at it at first. So you know,
No, you don't.
no,
No,
you're
you don't.
not.
Basically, I mean, I think I've seen this as and thank you, by the way. I really appreciate it. I've seen this. you know, because I talk to people like this all the time, and I listen to stories and I read the books and all this. Like it's a very much a common thread, you know,
Yes, it
that
very much is.
that you make no money in the beginning,
Yep.
and you just have to keep at it, keep going, and yeah. You
And by
said
the
you
way,
knew your
so I
go
was going
on.
to say I didn't write the book to be a Amazon bestseller. I knew it wasn't going to make me millions of dollars. That's not why I wrote the book, right? That's really not why. I wrote the book as a message, right?
Mm,
I mean, we've only sold 60 copies, which is more than I could have hoped for anyway. So, so but anyway, I
yeah.
interrupted you. Sorry.
No, well, actually, it's a start, you know,
Yeah.
and I think with books especially, it's there's a saying that I learned relatively early on in business is if you build it, they won't come. You know how
Hmm.
normally people say if you build this amazing thing, people will just come. Like they won't. And you might have the most amazing book in the world. People if they don't know about it, right?
Right.
So if just it, only if you build it, they won't come. So you have
Yep.
to push it out there a little, especially in the beginning before it kind of takes over. But like the people who sell the most books and stuff, um, they push it like so hard. Um, I guess I have a kind of a, I guess a story or an analogy maybe in a way. There's two guys that are both authors, both best-selling authors already. They have massive companies, millionaires. One of them is Dean Graziosi, and another one is Rich. Wait,
Robert Kiyosaki.
no, 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 no. The
No.
guy who created ClickFunnels. Are you familiar? Have you heard of
Yeah,
ClickFunnels?
I
Oh,
do, but I don't remember.
Russell Brunson. Russell
Russell
Brunson.
Bronson. Yeah.
So they both launched their books at the same time, and they're kind of friends, or they're in their own masterminds, right? So they said we're gonna do a challenge of like who can sell more books because we're
Yeah.
launching at the same time, right? And 2 months in, Dean and they both sold like thousands of copies, right? Like so it's not like 60 copies or whatever. Like they all both sold like thousands of copies of their books. Dean apparently outsold the other guy more than two, almost three times.
Hmm.
and and then they were talking like how is this possible, because he said like I created like so many different ads and I spent so much money on like and on Facebook ads and YouTube ads and all of this, and I basically created like a new video or like put out a new thing every day. And then they talked, and what the only thing that was different is that Dean created, instead of one new video or one new video ad per day, he created three new video ads per day.
Yeah.
And so every day he would look at, okay, how did the ads go before, right? How was the hook? How was this? How was this? How can I change it? How can I improve it? And he made three iterations every day, and so that's how he outsold him by like two or three times. But again, they sold so many of the books not just because they wrote it and then people started buying them, because they were like actually very actively marketing it and pushing it out there through paid ads in this case, right? But you going on podcasts to talk about your story and talk about your book, you going on conferences and talking about your book and podcast, like that's how you will actually sell it. My
Yeah.
mentor has a book, I don't know if I have it here. My mentor has a book called Winning the Day. Yeah, here. Winning the Day, an entrepreneur's guide to morning and evening routine mastery.
Who is
And
that?
this is his name is Jose Escobar.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
And
If I knew we were holding up books, I would have brought my book.
oh, it just so happens I usually just have a couple. Like I literally, because I travel a lot, right? I'm a nomad, so I only have do I have more? No, I have two books, only these two, and they're usually very close to me. So the one is The Power of
The
Now, and the
Power
other
of
is
Now. Yeah, yeah.
my
I
my
love that
mentor's
book.
book.
The
Me too.
Power
I
of Now.
read it. I read
Yeah.
it basically every day still. I've read it probably 15 times at this point, but I still read
Well,
it
I'm going
all
to
the time.
send you my book wherever you are.
Okay, it might take a while to get here, but I think it will.
How about this?
I'll
I will. How do I do this on Amazon? I will gift you on Amazon. How's that?
Yeah, we can do that. So
Yeah.
Do you have it as an ebook also, or only a physical?
No, it's an ebook as well. Yeah,
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect.
yeah,
That
it's an
works.
ebook as
That
well.
works. That works much better. Um, but yeah, I was gonna to finish my thought.
Sorry.
I think he published it about a year ago, and now he sold like a little bit over 1,000 copies. But again, like the way he sells it is that like he sells it. Like it doesn't just sell itself. But he said like
Yeah.
I always, if I go to a conference, like I went around with him. He's in Maryland, and I was
Hmm.
in the U.S. like earlier this year and late last year. I met him there, and I went on a conference with him and stuff like this as well. And he always has at least 5 copies of the book on him, like
Yep.
either in his car or like 2 copies in his bag or whatever. So like he just literally sells them like that, like when he's talking to people, right? Or obviously from stage or like and like all the time. And I saw that, I'm like, yeah, that's how it goes, you know. It just doesn't happen just by itself. If you're like, oh my god, I created, maybe sometimes, very rarely, or like
Very rare.
usually after you've already sold 2 3,000 copies by yourself, then it starts to pick up because people start talking about it and passing it
Yeah.
around and stuff, you know. So that's when. But just by itself, like if you write the book and expecting that all by itself it's gonna sell thousands of copies or something, no. Mm-mm.
No, I totally agree with you. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing podcast
Yeah.
tours and honestly, I wasn't going to talk about this, but it is a lead generation
Yeah.
to something that's even bigger in my dream, because this was a dream. Putting this book together took a year and a half. And it's not
Mm.
easy writing a book because there's a lot of research. And no, none of this was written in Chat GPT, not a damn word, just to be clear, because actually Amazon checks for that now. I don't know
Ooh,
if you know that or not, but Amazon checks for that now.
that's
Uh,
actually good.
but here's the thing, and I wasn't going to get to this, but since we're talking about mindset, I'm very much about giving back, right? Like you are. So I'm creating a mentorship program around, part of the book is mindset, right? But it's called Rise by 25. Okay.
Mm.
And what it is it's a mentorship program that's more of a camp than a mentorship, but it's for kids 16 to 25 to learn financial literacy through investing in real estate. And
Nice.
part of that is, some of that's going to be a scholarship as well, but it's going to be a paid mentorship, right? Because I had to employ people, and there's a lot that goes into that. But I believe that we don't have enough, at least in this country, right? Enough financial literacy training, because they don't teach you that. I don't know about your country, but here,
Oh hell no.
yeah. So Rise by 25 is going to be launched at the event on November 7th. It's going to be launched at
Nice.
that event.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
that's all
Good
part of
stuff.
the bigger plan. So again, when you have a big enough dream, the universe will find a way to make it happen. You just have to
Mm.
put it out there.
And you have to keep going, like, because sometimes it just takes longer than you would want to, right?
Yeah, every time, every dream. Yeah, I know.
Good point. Good point. Every
Yeah,
time, not just sometimes. And then,
every
yeah,
every time.
it's this interesting. I think I recently wrote about this as well, because I remember in I already said that in April 2022, that's when I quit my job and started doing this full
Yeah.
time. In January 2022, I was like this close from giving up, you know, and like this close from quitting. So within just 3 months of like, is this even worth it? Like, do I really
Yeah.
want to keep like burning myself out like this and like seeing almost no results and like this is not worth it, you know, and like all I get is basically hate online of like, oh, well, how can you call yourself a coach? You're a kid, you know, like those kind of things.
Yeah.
And then within just a few months, literally everything changed. Like the place where I lived changed, to like a 1,000% upgrade from where I lived, like in an immigrant house, to like an actual nice apartment. To yeah, even quitting my job and hanging out with different people and start to go into events and hosting meetups and stuff. Yeah, literally just within 3 months from wanting to give up on this, or like actually not wanting to give up, but like feeling like maybe, you know, this is, I don't know, and you keep going just like a little bit further, little
Yep.
bit further, and then there's the breakthrough, and it all just kind of starts working
Well,
out.
there's a chapter in the book about imposter syndrome in case you're
Mm,
interested.
nice.
Because look, we all have it, right? I wrote the book. I still like have imposter syndrome. Like I even question, like, am I the right authority to write this book,
Right.
right? Who am I to do this? And then, I have to be reminded by my coaches that you lived everything writing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
your mission is what keeps you going. And that's again why I'm here because I love your mission.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. Right. So you said normally I would ask what's next for you, right? And what are your goals? You already kind of mentioned you have a mentorship program. Do you have anything more in store? Like what's
My
your
wife
next
will kill me.
big
I got
dream?
My wife will kill me if I take on anything else more. It's really interesting living with a how do you put this, a visionary, and as you
Mm,
probably understand, you're a visionary, right? And it's to keep up with a visionary, you have to have a certain personality to keep up with a visionary. So the next big dream I had to put aside, honestly, because I have
mm,
a lot of them, because I believe that once you lose focus on the universe can only take so much, right?
mm,
And if you don't focus on that one thing and get that done, the universe doesn't know which one to deliver, so it's not going to deliver anything.
mm.
So the big
Okay.
thing is really for the next year, I'm focusing on rise by 25. That's it, right? Because I believe that
Nice.
there's enough young generation that want to they're not going to be satisfied with where they're at in their life, and this generation is a lot smarter in some ways about what they want, right? So, and honestly, there's a lot of kids that go to college and drop out of college because it's not for them. They it's just not resonating. So why spend $30,000 on college when I know I'm talking about the mentorship a lot, but it really is more about what do you want, right? And you have to decide on what it is and keep that path like you're doing. Because I think if you give the universe too many choices, like I said, it
Mm,
just doesn't know what to deliver. And it's a
mm.
paradox because I've lived that paradox and I've given the universe too many choices. And you know how to make God laugh. You know
How?
that joke.
No?
You tell him your dreams and hopes. That's how you make God laugh. It's a joke, but that's kind of
Okay.
the point. Don't give it too much it can't handle.
Right. So focus on, yeah, that's actually a very good insight. And I think it's important to talk about, especially to geared towards younger people, right?
Yeah,
About mentorship programs and like giving them or letting them know that there's other ways, that there's other opportunities. Because most people who go to college, most people who go to universities, because they think that's the only way, or that's the like basic. They don't know that they have another choice,
yeah.
right?
Or their parents don't give them another choice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's sometimes the case
there's
as well.
there's that.
There's a lot of that too, but yeah, like I've questioned this. It's but for me it's a little bit different because like education is actually free in most of Europe, or like even universities are actually free in most of Europe. So for me it was maybe a little bit different, but in the Netherlands where I lived, where I did the airport job, and then obviously the US and other places, um, it's just so almost outrageous, like 70,000 in debt, $170,000 in debt from school, like
Yep,
what? And
yep,
so I questioned it. I was like, why so many people are like totally okay and totally willing to pay 70, 50, 70 grand for
yeah,
university that they will likely not use. Look at the statistics as well, like how many college students, how many university graduates actually end up getting the job that they wanted or that they even studied for. it's,
yep.
it's a pretty low percentage.
It's a low
And
percentage.
but so
Yeah.
many people are like willing to go into huge debt to pay 70 grand. But then a $2,000 coaching program, or let's say $5,000 coaching program, or mentoring program, that's like a year or 2 years, let's say, that will teach you how to have actual like real life skills to build your
Yeah.
business, or apply for jobs that you actually want immediately, and how the communication skills or whatever it might be, like real life skills. People are like, nah, that's too expensive, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want. So it's like, how is this happening? Like, it doesn't make any sense. To me, it doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I'm totally on board with you. And I think that people that get to the point that understand what you and I are talking about understand that if you go to like these free webinars, everybody's giving a free. They're what they're doing is they're dropping breadcrumbs. They're not giving you everything, right? So the whole point for me is like give people what they want, right? If you're upfront with people and you actually understand the value that they're getting, I think that from a standpoint of that, then it makes it easier for somebody to digest that.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of people out there doing webinars, and it's like, hey, if you want to know more, blah blah blah, which is fine. It's the way it's set up, but I think that there's a paradigm shift coming, and I
Yeah.
think that people will understand. I spent money on college, right? I did okay. I never forced my daughter to. I wanted her to. She chose to go for a little bit and said it wasn't for her, and she's doing well right now because she followed her own path. So I couldn't be a hypocrite in what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I just couldn't. As a parent, I understood, and I think that from a standpoint of mentorships, if you seek that out rather than college, there's nothing wrong with that. And paying the five or $10,000. But what I would say this is that do your homework on the people. Like do your homework and make
Oh
sure
yeah.
that those testimonials that you're hearing are for real. When I listen to the testimonials of the people that are on your Facebook page, right? That was real, right? I got a sense of who you were, and I
Thank
think
you.
that it's valuable to ask the people that you were in your mentorship program or your training, you know, what their thoughts about you really. Like I'm asking for real thoughts on the book because I've read it so many times I can't tell you if it's good or not anymore. Honestly, I can't. Like
Right.
my wife is reading it right now. She goes, "Andy, this is really good." I'm like, "Is it?"
Because yeah, you get kind of stuck in it. And it's like it just
Yeah.
becomes your world. And sometimes that's where kind of, I guess, my thought would be like, that's why even more imposter syndrome can come in with, because like you have your own perspective, you cannot really see, but like people from outside, they're like, whoa, this is so amazing, but you're like, really? Because like
Yeah.
it's normal for you, but it can be new knowledge, golden nuggets, completely new perspective for them, because they've never heard something like that before, and
Yeah.
they've never lived it. So yeah.
I mean, part of one of the chapters in the book, I talk about be everywhere, right?
Mm.
And I talk about, I show a picture of Alice in Wonderland with the caterpillar with the hookah pipe, right? I don't know if you remember that visual or not from Alice in Wonderland, but there's a visual. I actually put the visual in the book to remind people that the caterpillar was talking about, he was telling Alice, who are you, not what you are. Like, who are you, right?
Mm.
And we need to be reminded of that sometimes, right? And so there are things in the book I talk about like imposter syndrome and being an extrovert or introvert because they're important for us to understand when we're out there. Like when you're out there, you're always reminding people of who they are, right?
Mm.
And the mindset of somebody who might not have all the social skills that they need, right? And it's okay. So, from a standpoint of making real connections, like we're doing now, and you can use common threads on all of your podcasts. I'm good with you using that term. Not kidding,
Nice.
but you are
Okay.
doing amazing work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you have any closing words or closing statements to leave people with?
Um, Oh gosh, that's. I wish
Full
you
of
would have asked
pleasure.
me that beforehand. I think I kind of threw everything out at you all at once. I kind of vomited out everything. It really is. When it comes down to it, it's just don't put on a facade, right?
Mm,
People really want to like what I had to learn because I come from a fake world, and what I mean by a fake world is the TV and film industry is a fake world, right? We're selling a dream,
right.
okay? And so I had to unlearn or learn just to be me. Like this new world of social media that we're in, I thought I had to put on an air that I didn't need to be put on. Like, look at me, I'm okay. I might be going a little long, but I just got it, okay? And this is what I teach people in my class. I teach Monday nights in another class. But basically, what I teach people is it's really about just being who you are on social media, which was a lesson I had to learn because people don't want to know if you got your. I don't care that you went to a great blah 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 or whatever, and I'm photo bombing myself or I'm. This is not people. If I look at somebody having an amazing weekend or look at me and look at all this great stuff I have, I will just scroll past that. I'm not interested in that anymore, right? I'm more
Yeah.
interested in. And sorry if I'm going a little long, but I did a post as a test. So I did a post, and the post was, "We own a piece of property." Actually, no, it wasn't a post. It was a decision to make. I had a decision to promote the book or talk about these people's lives that we held in our hands because of the hurricane that just happened in Florida.
Mm,
And I chose to not do the book and chose to talk about how we were taking care of our tenants just in case something happened to our we own a 14 unit apartment building in Tampa,
mm,
right? So I chose to tell that story. And it was an experiment. Okay, and the experiment was not not looking at how great I was producing this book and writing this book, weighed up against my real story about how I felt about the hurricane devastating Tampa,
mm.
and that was more heartfelt from my readers than, "Hey, look at me, I wrote a book." Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Be
Coming
real.
from be a real place, yeah.
Lovely. Amazing.
So
Thank you to Andy for coming out, doing this, sharing your story and sharing your wisdom. And, I'm
thank you
looking
for
forward
having me,
to
my.
being in touch.
We better be. I mean, you and I are Andrews or Andes,
We're
Andre.
Andy's. All right.
So